So, hello everyone. I hope the stream is visible. Okay, cool. So, this session is about the standard template library of C++, and we'll go through various things that I have planned. So, this is our agenda for today. We'll be covering all of these topics. How the screen is also visible. I mean, you can read the text, right? Yeah, cool. So, we'll be going through all of these things today. I'll upload this file later on GitHub, so just for reference. Okay, so let's start. In what is C++? Like, like I'm hoping that most of us have already used C because it was mandatory in our colleges. At least our batch had. So C++ is like the superset of C. Like it has everything that C has and much more than C actually has. So C++ was used for system programming to write kernels. Well, C was used for writing kernels, but for writing drivers and everything low level stuff that needs very good memory management and control over your memory. Python doesn't give you that much control over your memory, so that's one reason that I don't like Python. Other than that, it's a very good language. C++ has very good control over your memory. You can literally see how many bytes your variable is taking. You can modify that, shrink that, decrease that, whatever you want. You can allocate, deallocate. You can do a lot of stuff with your memory in C++. So that's the reason it's used in low level devices also, like Raspberry Pi, Arduino uses C. But yeah, C++ is for very low level devices. Yeah. So why are we learning the C++ for now? Well, for competitive programming, C++ is the standard, like because it's really fast, very good memory management, and it has lots of algorithms that you can use, which will be very helpful for you in C++, in competitive programming, right? So, what are the basic types in C++? Let's go through that first. Yeah, some of the basic data types are integer, long. Okay, there's actually one more thing that's called yeah, long. Okay, yeah. So the data types are integer, long, float, double, character, boolean, and string. So what are these exactly? Integer is a integer, and long are all for numeric data type. Numeric as in whole numbers, which can be negative, positive, for basically integers, right? Not exactly whole numbers, integers. I mean from negative values to positive values, but they are not fractions. For fractions, we use float and double, and for characters are for our alphabets A B C D, all of that use, and boolean is true false, and string wasn't there in C, but it was added in C++. uh, String is basically a container that is an array of characters. We'll see what an array is later part, but these are some of the basic data types. So how do we, let's see how these work. Let me create a test file. Okay, so all of our C programs start with a main function. So the main function is an entry to your program, and when you run the program, your operating system looks for the main function and runs the main function. So the main functions looks something like this. Main. So that's our main function, right? Um, yeah. So this is our main function, and how do we compile our C++ program? We use a compiler called G++. That's GNU C++, GNU C++. So let's go to the directory. Let's go G++, test.cpp. So as you can see, the program has compiled. If I do ls, you'll see executable called a.out. You can run the executable like this, /a.out. So that runs it. This program doesn't do anything. It's empty at first. So yeah, so that's the very skeletal program. But there is something missing in this. This is a very simple empty program. Let's say I want to create an integer and print its value, right? So how does that work? Let's create an integer I is equal to 2. Let's do uh, uh, yeah, let's do see std cout. Okay, so let's try to compile our program again. So when I compile this program, you can see my compiler gives a lot of warnings and errors, right? Like what is cout, what is std. I didn't really tell you what these are. So don't worry, for now we'll go to what they are exactly. But to know what cout does and what end line is, that's std and then what they are, it is defined in something called a header file. So we include a header file like this. So a header file is something that contains the let's say prototype of these functions. Prototype as in what these functions are and what they can do, what arguments of these functions are, any variable that is it takes and what does it exactly do. So that is written in a header file. That header file here is iostream. That stands for input output stream. So input output stream header file will contain what cout in end line will do. And also we need to let's just save this and see what happens when we compile this. As you can see, we also get a warning that says ISO C++ forbids declaration of main with no type. So right now I declared a function called main, which does not return. I didn't really tell the compiler, okay, this is my return time. So it automatically is inferring that my main will return an integer, because by default the main function has to return something, right? So let's define int and let's say that it returns 0. So now if I compile my program, I get no warnings, no errors. Let's try to run it. So when I run it, I get an output which says that the value is 2. So that was an integer. How do you define a long? You say long I2 is equal to 3, and instead of I'll print I2, and it just works, right? Let's compile and run. So it says now that it's 3. Similarly, that's integer long and long that work for integer values from negative uh, non-fractional numbers to positive numbers, right? So yeah, now let's talk about floats. So what exactly are floats? Let's define our float f. Anything that has fractions, right? 232.234. We remove this and put f here. Now I'll do g plus plus dash bp and out. Yeah. So now it prints 2.234. So that was float. Double is okay. So that's float f. Float and double differ by the precision. They have a limit of their lower bound and upper bound. So that's the difference between float and double. Now let's look at characters. Char c equal to c. Now when I print c, you can see that it prints c to it. And then there's boolean values. A boolean can either be true or false. So some of you who come from C background wouldn't have this boolean value. So in C++, that was one addition to it. So yeah, let's try to print A. This will be interesting to see what it prints out, right? So it prints out 1, because by default any non-zero number is true and 0 is false. So if I say b is equal to, let's say, false, it should print 0. Yeah. So that was boolean. Let's look at string. Yeah, so that was string. So these were some basic data types, right? And let's see. So in the file readme.md, I have written some like whatever stuff you have in data types, and then I have a small homework for you. So this is for you to try, and I'll solve some of them, and the rest you have to see what they are. So the first question is, what happens when you overflow the limits? Like, and how do you even know the limits of each of the type, right? So there is a header file for that called limits. So let's declare integer I is equal to numeric limits of integer of, let's say, max, to see what the maximum value is. We'll look at what std colon colon means and what the angular bracket is and what this colon colon is again. Don't worry about that. We do not understand that right now. That's fine. This is just to demonstrate how to calculate the numeric limits, the min and max of the value, right? Yeah. So let's run and print the value now. So this is the maximum limit of integer, right? So what will happen if I add, let's say, one more number to it? We are trying to overflow it. So it does give me a warning. My compiler gives a warning that there's an integer overflow in the expression this. So as soon as I go, the number next to the maximum value, it goes to a negative value, right? It goes to the minimum value that integer can go. So it's like a cyclic rotation. So let me tell you what I mean by that. Okay, so this is integer. It goes from minus 2 into 10 raised to the power 9 to 2 times 10 raised to the power 9, and these are the discrete value that it has. So as soon as, so it's like a circular thing, right? Like let's say this is 0 at the middle, this is 1 2, and you go up to 2 into 10 raised to the power 9. That's a big number something, and as soon as you go to the number next to it, it goes back to this, and you keep on adding it, goes like this, and it's like a circular thing, right? Yeah, so that was what happens when you overflow a limit of a value, right? In Python, there isn't any overflowing thing because by default they are arbitrary precision, right? You can go to whatever value you want and it wouldn't overflow. That is not so in C++. The every data that you define has to have a data type and has to have some limits. We'll look into there are ways to go past that and have arbitrary precision values. So we'll not, that is way beyond the scope of this thing, this basic session, right? So we'll look at some of the functions that C++ has to find out the minimum and maximum of two values, right? Let's say integer I is equal to std min of, let's say, 3 comma 4. Right? So what will be the minimum of 3 and 4? Will 3. So we'll see 3 in the console, right? Let's say I want the max element. So now it should give me 4. So those are two for min and max. Now what if I want min and max, which is min and min is max at once? So for that we have min max, and what does it say? It has no min max. I'm pretty sure it does. Uh, uh, okay, so std min max is defined in an header file called algorithm. So I have to include that first. So now min max works. Min-max actually returns, let's see what an error is. Yeah, no suitable conversion from this list. So what min-max does it returns you a pair of values, the minimum and maximum element. So this should be std pair. We'll go into what standard pair is and what this template argument means. So that's I and I dot first. That's the min element. Don't worry if you do not understand. What I'm trying to explain is like what all small functions that you have for numeric data type. So I dot second. Okay, yeah. There are no single characters strings in C++. So every string that you define has to be double quoted. There are no single quote strings. Yeah, so it prints 3 comma 4. 3 is the min element, 4 is the max element. Right? I can also give it an multiple values, right? Let's say 1, 2, 3, 4. And Now also it will find me the min value. Min element is 1, max element is 4, right? Even if I shuffle the values, it would still work. Let's say I'll give the first value as 5, run it again. So yeah, the max element is 5, min element is 2. So it works for unsorted range of values, right? So those were the some functions related to this. Now let's look at the logical operators. So as we know that there's a Boolean data type, right? Boolean A is equal to true, Boolean B is equal to false. Now if I want to do like specific logical operations with them, right? Like AND or XOR, so you can do that by saying A and B. Okay. So let's what's true and false? It's false, right? So it prints me 0. What's true and true? It should give me 1, right? Because true and true is true, and true in C++ is represented as 1. So it gives me 1. In the similar way, we can do A or B. So it should give me a true here again, or you can do XOR also. I do XOR. Yeah, true XOR true is false. Now there is something called bitwise operation also, right? This bitwise operation is very important as well, because in C plus comparative programs there are some few problems that will go into very depth of maths and numeric stuff. So there you will have to know what is the property of like in C plus plus you can do bitwise operations, right? So you will need to use that to solve the problems. Yeah, so let's look at the AND or an XOR have their corresponding bitwise operations. So the way it works is, as I said, there is AND, there is OR, and there is XOR. So let's take two numbers, 2 and 3. So how is 2 represented in binary? Let's take 4 bits. So it's 0, 0. So it's 0, 0, 1, 0, right? 1, 2, 4, 8. So this is 1, 1, right? So the way AND works is it does AND operation for every bit. So 1 and 0 is 0, and 1 and 1 is 1. This is 0, this is 0. So what is this number? This number is 2, right? Now let's do for OR. 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, 1, 1 should be 0, 0, 1, 1. What is that? That's 3, right? Let's do XOR. 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, 1, 1. Or what is 0 XOR 1? It's 1. 1 XOR 1 is 0, 0, 0. So that is 1, right? So these are the value that we are expecting if we do the bitwise operations between these two, right? So let's try to do that. Also, as I'm doing these problems, you can also do it on your local machine. Try it out, play with them, and you can also like ask questions if any regarding them. I don't think there should be any because let's cover up some of the part and then we'll go for questions. So where did the ID? So let's take a number int a is equal to, what did we take? We have taken 2 and 3, right? And so what are we expecting if we do 2 and 3? We are expecting the answer to be 2, right? Yeah, so it outputs 2. What happens if I do OR? The answer is 3. And if we do XOR, the answer is 1. So these are the bitwise operators. There is one operator that I missed, that is called the NOT operator. So let's say uh, 0, right? Let's take that. This is a little tricky question. What NOT operator basically does is convert 0 to 1 and 1 to 0. But there is a slight trick in this. What do you think is tilde A? Uh, so let's say our number is 0, 0, 1, 0, and if I do not to it, it will make it 1, 1, 0, 1, right? So what do you think will happen if I do tilde 0? Any guesses that it might show, right? Any wild guess what will happen? Okay, that is right. It will do 1, 1, 1, 1. Uh, what did I write? Yeah, 1, 1, 1, 1. That's because we'll have to assume the number of bits of 0, right? So let's say 0 has 4 bits, like we're representing the value 0 with 4 bits. So if it is with 4 bits, this is how it will be represented. Now there's a thing that the most significant bit is also called the sign bit. So here the sign bit is 1, right? So it means that this is a negative number. This tilde 0 is a negative number. So what do we do if it's a negative number? We'll find the 2's complement of it, right? And we know that it will be negative. So what's the 2's complement of this? It will be 0, 0, 0, 0 plus 1. So that's 0, 0, 0, 1. And we know that it's negative. So the value is negative 1. So tilde 0 is negative 1. This is very useful because most people would usually think. Okay, I'll repeat it again. So usually most people think that tilde 0 will be 1, but it's actually not. Okay, so the tilde thing, right? Tilde 0. Tilde is bitwise not operator. So what bitwise operator means that it works on every bit of the data. Now let's say the value was 4 and not 4, let's take an odd number, right? Let's take the value was 5. So how is it represented in 4 bits? It's 0, 1, 0, 1. So if I do tilde 5, what will it make it? It will make it 1, 0, 1, 0. So it's basically doing bitwise not to every bit of the value. Right? There's also a logical not, which is this, which is not 0. Here you can expect not 0 to be 1. But tilde 0 is not 1. Something you need to keep in your mind. Right? I think, yeah, so that was the tilde operator. Moving on. So we finished these. So what happens when you overflow the limits? That's done. How do you know the limits of each of the data types? That's done. You can like that's a homework, so you should Google and then get to know. And there is something called typecasting. Let me show you what that means. Let's say integer 2 is a is equal to 5 and integer b is equal to 2. So what do you expect if I do a divided by b? Like if I want to do 5 divided by 2, what do you expect? Like generally, in a human sense, you would expect 2.5, right? But it represents me 2. The reason this is a is of type integer, b is of type integer, and if you do integer divided by integer, you should get an integer, right? In a programmer's logic. So that's the reason 5 divided by 2 is 2.5 actually. But we ignore the decimal part and take the ceiling of that function and ceiling of the value. So that's 2. Suppose I did not want this behavior. What would I do? Change any of these values to a decimal. So let's convert a to float. So now I can expect the value to be 2.5. This is because a is now typecasted to a float. So previously a was an integer and now I typecasted explicitly for it to become a float. There's another typecast called implicit. Let's say I did this. I multiplied a with 1.0 and then divided with b. I see what 2.5 again. This is because my compiler now knows that a is of type integer, but 1.0 is of type double, I think. Yeah, this 1.0 is of type double. and a double multiplied with an integer should result in a double. Anything like if there's an operator and it has to do binary operation on the two, and one of them the result should be the highest memory occupied. So in this case, the memory occupied by double is more than that of integer, so it converts both of them to what the answer to be a double, right? That's how it works. Now let's something that I did not include was how do we even see the size of a variable. So you have an operator for that called size of. Okay, let's do that. Yeah, so it tells me that a is of 4 bytes. There's another misconception that people usually have is size of is a function. It isn't actually. Size of is an operator. That's the reason I didn't have to use the parenthesis here, right? I didn't have to do size of a. You can do it, it still give you the same value, but size of is an operator, you can use without parenthesis to work. Okay, the next bonus thing that I've written here is macro substitution. What exactly that is? It's not there in Python, it's not there in Java, but it's there in C++. And why is it? Why is it useful to us? Right. So let's say that I have a value called float. Pi is equal to 3.14, and if I print it, I get 3.14. But what I want to do is not write pi here as a variable. I want to like use something like this. I do not want to write it as a variable. I do not want to allocate memory to it. What will I do? I'll define define pi is 3.14. So and now if I print pi, the output is same. But here I did not define a local variable. Right? So what macro substitution does is it goes like this. Hash define wherever you find the I mean the value how do I express it? Wherever you find pi, just replace it with 3.14 in the source code. So wherever I type pi, it'll replace pi with 3.14. So after doing the macro substitution, the compiler will make it like this. It's just simple substitution. It's really fast. Like if I do float pi is equal to 3.14, it will allocate memory to it and then print it. Right? 3.14 need not know that. I mean, hash define pi 3.14 will not do that. It will directly replace wherever I've written pi to 3.14 and it will still work. Another thing that you can do with macro substitution is called macro functions. If I do max of a and b, okay, so I also need to tell you something called ternary operators. So a ternary operator works like this. There's a condition that should result in a boolean value and a question mark, and if true, do this, if false, do this. This is the syntax for a ternary operator. So you define a condition, and if that condition is true, it will go to this block, and if it is false, it will go to this block. It is exactly like if condition. This is the if true part, and you have an else, and this is the false part, right? This is the true part. So that's exactly what that is. It's a single line. It looks better. So yeah, we'll use that here. Okay, so a is greater than b underscore a. Okay, so now if I try to print max of 2 comma 3, it should print me 3. So yeah, there we go. It works. So a benefit of this macro max is, let's say I have a float a is equal to 3.14, and I do max of a comma b. Now I would like to change it to an integer, and if I do it again, it still works, right? So that's the thing of it. You do not have to like explicitly define what my a is, what data type my a is, one data type is. It'll automatically like it's just substitution, right? This will be substituted with this a is greater than b, a or b. So wherever you type max of a b, it will directly replace with this. So that's the reason it works with any kind of data type. But as we now know, there's a stud max. So instead of this, you can directly do std max of a comma b. It's also some takes, it can take any kind of data type. So that also works. Okay, so this was macro substitution. So guys, any doubts until now? Anything that we have done till operators, bitwise operations, all the data types, typecasting, any doubts until here? So now we'll be starting with arrays and the standard libraries. Okay, cool. So now we'll go on to, okay, so this was all that we, yeah. So this was all that we know about those data types like int long, those are single data types. What if I wanted to have like store various data in the same container like an array, right? What is an array? It's multiple data that you store in a single container. A container you can think of like in bucket, you can throw things at the bucket, and then you need a very efficient way to get things out of the bucket, right? Okay, so that those are something called arrays. How do you declare an array? You declare the data type, you define a name for the array, a variable name, and define how many elements you have in them. This is exactly how you define it. And then I can say every index of the array is accessed by the brackets, and then you define the index of your element in those brackets. So you have 0 is equal to 2. So I'm defining the 0th element to be 2. Thing to also notice that all our arrays are 0 indexed, right? Unlike MATLAB is indexed from 1. That's a very stupid decision, and it could be good because mathematicians usually like to start with 1, but every programming language should work with 0. There is a very good reason to why it's 0 indiced. If I have time, then I'll explain it at the end, so you guys can remind me to actually explain you why are our programming languages indiced from 0, why not 1? That's a very good explanation to that. So this is how I define an array. This is how I assign values to elements to it, and then I can do cout a of 0, leave some space, and a of 1, right? I mean, are you guys getting bored? Because these are very basics, and I'm sure all of you already know these basics. There might be small stuff that you would have missed, so I'm just telling this. Yeah, so it prints the value 2 and 3. So those were arrays. Very simple. You define the data type, the name of the array, and how many values you want to store. So here I say that I store 100 values. So what do you think the limit of my arrays are? What is the size limit of my array? There should be a limit, right? So what do you think I can raise this number to? Can it be 10 raised to power 9, 10 raised to power 20, 10 raised to power 30? So any idea what the limit can be? Yeah, it is the integer limit range. That's right. So it can go unsigned integers actually. But there are actually ways that you can go up to long limits, and then it finally boils down to your limit of your RAM, right? But yeah, it is int max. So let's now go to, okay, there's a thing that I did not address. I might have forgotten that whatever we are doing, I would like you to, like, I am also mixing up C++98 and C++11. I would like you to usually use C++11 wherever possible, C++14 wherever possible. I'll tell you after we finish, you will know what's the difference between those 11, 14, and 17. So right now, what we are using are very primitive. Like even C has these, right? So what's the like benefit of using C++? So in C++, we have something called vectors. So it's called std vector, and then you define those angular brackets, define your data type, and define my variable. So now I defined a vector A. How do I insert elements to the vector? I call A dot pushback, pushback of 0, A dot pushback of 1. So I have pushed my elements 0 and 1, and let's see what happens if I run it. So what does say? Vector is not a member of std, right? So vector is actually defined in a header file called vector. Yeah. Yeah, so it prints 0 and 1 that I pushed. So vector is an arbitrary length. It's not an array because it's not fixed size. Arrays are usually fixed size. So this is an arbitrary sized container that you can push as many elements as you want, until unless you obviously exhaust your RAM, right? And go until then. So this was vectors. So what is the benefit of using vectors? Now let's say I wanted the maximum element in a vector. Instead of like creating your vector like this, you can uh, initialize it something like this. So 2, 3, 1, 6. So right now my vector has how many elements? 6 elements, and I want to find the minimum and maximum element, right? So what do? I'll do std max element of the standard max element is a function that is expecting a range of, like, what's the memory range that you want me to search for the maximum element. Yeah, right. So that's standard begin, standard end of a. So this will return me the maximum value. So the answer should be 6, right? Yeah. So it prints me 6. So yeah, that's how it is. Okay. The vectors have other inbuilt functions like at, back, begin, and then there's emplace, there's erase, front, back, max size, insert. There's a lot of functions that you can use. You do not have those functions inbuilt in arrays, right? But what if you wanted a fixed size vector? Let's say I wanted my vector that has only 10 elements. It cannot go beyond 10. So the way you would do that, like, you cannot do that in vectors, right? Because vectors are arbitrary sized. So in that case, what would you use? You do not want to use an array because it wouldn't have those inbuilt functions, right? Like this, you cannot use standard begin of a, standard end of a, right? You cannot tell it, I want from this to this, right? So what would you do in that case? You would create a standard array. You also have to tell the length. So this is how it is. So now we have created an array where you have all the inbuilt functions, right? So that's one benefit of using standard array. It will be fixed size and it will be memory efficient than vector. Vector like has to do a lot of stuff, like push back, pop back. It has those functions that if you do not need, you know that your an array is fixed, you can do this. Now because C++, there's a thing in C++ that it has to be backwards compatible. जो भी हम कर रहे थे C++ 98 and everything, It has like C++11 wala compiler should also support those stuff, right? It has to support those old kind of arrays also. So all our function standard, min, max, and everything have to support raw arrays also, right? So let's say I have int b of 1. Let's say I wanted to do max, min, max element. It's a max element. So what is that? B comma b plus 6. The way this works is standard max element needs an memory location. Like from which memory location until where do I search for the maximum element? So here I'm telling it go from the beginning of B until the end of B. So B has 6 elements, so it is B plus 6 will be the end of B. Now what really is B? Arrays are actually pointers to memory location. If I do standard cout B, so what do you expect this code will give me when I run this? Any guesses? Python people will usually expect that it will print the entire array, but it won't in C++. What do you think it will do? So it actually prints a memory location in hex value. So this is the starting memory location of B. And what will be the end of memory location? It's B plus 6. Yeah. So that was about arrays and some stuff like max element, min max element. Uh, some homework for you guys. So the first question, what is emplace back? In something that you would have noticed is if I do standard vector int a, there is something called a dot emplace back. So what could be the reason of having that function? Something that you need to Google and find out. Okay, so and look for various ways to initialize a vector. I think I did show you two ways, right? This is one way, and then there's another way is this. So these are the few ways that you can initialize. There are more ways you can look at them. Now there's also a function called standard accumulate. So what does standard accumulate do? It accumulates the value, basically adds the values. So this is the code for it. You can look at what other things standard accumulate can do. It can also multiply the values. So let's say you wanted to calculate factorial of a number, not factorial, the product of all the elements in an array, and you wanted to do a one-liner code. This is how you will do. Matlab, you'll have to Google how you do that. So that will be done using accumulate, but it will be slightly modified. So this part actually sums up all the elements. You can look later what those do. Something I did not address is what is standard begin and standard end, right? So let's say you have a standard vector. Now I wanted to know the starting of the array. How do you do it? A dot begin will give you a memory address like 0x333. So that's the start of the array vector. Sorry. And a dot end will give 0x like 360, right? Something like that, right? So you need these two things to send it to functions like standard accumulate and let's say standard sort, and some many like algorithmic function usually need these two things, the beginning of a vector and the end of the vector. Now instead of doing this, you can also do standard begin of uh, a and standard end of a. So these two are analogous, so you can use either of them, same means the same thing. Now let's look at IO operations. So As I said, I'll tell you what C in C out is. So C is a function that is used for taking an input from the standard input. So anything that I'm typing here on the console is called standard input, and what my program outputs is called standard output, right? So yeah, so those anything, let's say I'm doing something like this: standard cout, what is your name, and then I define a standard string name, and I do standard C name, and then I want to print your name. Okay, so now if I run it, now it is asking what is your name, and then it says your name is this. So it works. Now these two things, the angular brackets, like less than, what is your name? So less than is called insertion operator, and greater than is called extraction operator. So these are overloaded operators. So see, basically whatever you can chain strings also, right? So what this is doing is it's like insertion operator is inserting that string to cout, and cout is taking the string and printed it. Is it still cracking right now? Let me just check again. I mean, if it's tracking, you can check the live stream if that's fine. The YouTube live stream. It doesn't, because on my end it looks fine. If your audio is cracking, you can check on YouTube if that is fine. Okay, cool. Anyways, yeah, you can go to the, okay, you can go to YouTube if required. So these were the extraction and insertion operator. So basically, it is throwing those strings. What is your name to cout, and it's just printing the standard out like this console, right? And scene is taking whatever input that you typed and storing it in the string. Pretty simple. There isn't much here. Okay, some conversion functions that you need to know is S2I, STR2L, S2F. So S2I is actually stand for string to integer. Let's say you are taking in an integer and you want to convert that string. Let's say you are taking a string which is actually an integer, but you're taking as a string, and you want to convert that to an actual integer. In that, you'll have to use S2I. S2I will take a string, convert it to integer, and give it back to you. STR2L is converting string to long. S2F is string to float. S2do is string to double, and S2ld is string to long double. I think I did not address this. C++ also has this long double. That's and long double I think is the highest precision floating point that you can go for, right? Okay, some of the homework questions that here is how do you read a line of input? Because right now, if I run this again, and if I write my complete name, it will not take it will only take the first string and then throw away whatever is after that. So how do you really take a line of input? Google that and you will find it pretty, not much in. Okay, there's another question: how do you read a file and point it to standard input and standard output to that file? So what I want you to do is, let's say we'll have two files called input.txt, and we'll have another file called output.txt. So what I want to do is, whatever I type here, like in the console, should go into input.txt, and whatever I program output should go to output.txt. So you need to look for how the redirection thing is done. Another question is std_endl. So what endl does, it prints a new line to your output. So let's say here, let's say I'll do endl. Okay, so if I run this, I'll get two lines. This is a string, another line. So what endl is doing, endl stands for end line. It's putting a new line character to your output. But what's the why shouldn't I use this? Like new lines are also defined like this, right? It'll also produce the same output. So why not use this? Something that you need to Google, like what's the difference between end line and new line? So it actually is a performance benefit. Like if you have a lot of printing that you are doing to console, not use end line, use slashing. If you are using threads, use end line always. It's something related to flushing your output. You need to see and whatever. Now next are functions, right? Like we've written some function, we have used some inbuilt function like stud max, stud min, right? So let's say how do we define our own function? In C++ functions, you need to remember these two things. There's something called pass by value and pass by reference. These things are also there in Java and in Python, but they are some default behavior. And here you have much more control over that behavior. So let's say I have a function called foo, which takes in two arguments, int x and int y. What does it do? It simply does x is equal to x plus 1, y is equal to y plus 1, and just prints it out, right? That x is y. Now we'll call that function. How do we call that function? It's called foo 1 comma 2. What do you think it will print? It should print x should be 2. It will print x. It will print 2 comma 3, right? Let's run and see. Yeah, it prints 2 comma 3. Now we have defined here and like our foo is actually returning an integer, but I'm not actually returning anything. So let's just remove that. Yeah, so it's prints 2 comma 3. What if I print the value of let's say I have an integer x comma y is equal to 1, y is equal to 2, and I call foo of x comma y. And after the calling of the function, I'll just print x and y. So now what are we expecting? 2, 3, and xy values are not changed. It's 1 comma 2. Let's say instead of int x, I did something like this. I'll tell you what this is. Now if I run this function, my values are now changed. So what this ampersand does is x is now passed by reference. So basically whatever happens to, like I passed x and y to foo function, right? So whatever this x is the same as that x. Let me try to tell you what that. So we have a foo function that takes int ampersand x, int ampersand y, and it does something with x is equal to x plus 1, y is equal to y plus 1, right? And I call, and I have here x is equal to 1, y is equal to 2, and I call foo x comma y. So what this does is, now when you're passing x comma y, now the memory location of uh, uh, this x, that is this x and this y, is the same as this x and this y. So anything that you do with the past variable x, this thing will directly affect this. This does not allocate new memory to it. So directly pointing to that, and this is directly pointing to this. And when you do not use the ampersand thing, they have their own separate memory location. This is not the same as that. Now this x and that x are different. They have a separate memory location. This has a separate memory location. Now whatever you do with this x, they will not affect these x and y's, right? That's pass by value and pass by reference. Okay, there's a small animation I think that I'd like to show. Let's see if this works. Yeah, so this is exactly pass by value and pass by reference. You see what happens to the cups, right? In pass by reference, the same cup is filled. In pass by value, a copy of the cup is made and that is filled. So it does not affect the actual cup. In pass by reference, you fill the the referenced cup, it will fill up the actual cup as well. I'll try to include that in the readme also. So that was IO, that was functions. There's something I want you to look at is standard function. What is standard function we do? What would it be used for? Now let's look at structures and classes. Okay, so do I just wanted to ask that do I have to explain what classes are? They are basically containers, right? They are containers for your custom data type. Because let's say I wanted to store a complex number. Right now I do not have something called complex data type, so I'll have to make my own, right? That I'll do. I'll define a class called complex. In that I'll define some member variables like int real, comma imaginary, and then that will be my complex class. So I can use this data type now. So let's say I wanted to create a variable of complex. I'll do complex C. So now I have declared a object of my class called C. So these are something that's related to object-oriented programming, classes and objects. You can look at that later. Something that I wanted to know about the difference between structures and classes. All the members in structures are public by default, and in class you can have public and private. You can look up what they mean. Some homework for you. Like what do we need? Do we really need a class for point? What do I mean by that? By that I mean, let's say I want to store coordinates of my graph in the values. So I'll do point int x comma int y. So the question is, do I really need a point? Because I have a data type called standard pair. Remember I told you I'll tell you what standard pair is. Because in min max I had to use this. So standard pair is a pair of values. So here I'm defining that I have a standard pair data which is of int comma int. So I can do a dot first. A dot first refers to the first value in my page. So a dot first is equal to 2, a dot second is equal to 3. Okay, so you see that it becomes tedious to write FIRST, SCCOND, right? What if I want to get away without typing so much? What do I do? I'll just create a macro function as define S as second, hash define F as first. So now I can do a dot f is equal to 2 and a dot s is equal to 3. You see, I don't have to write so much. Something that you have to notice: don't do anything like this in production system. That's very stupid, because you'll mess up a lot of things. You do not really know what. Maybe there is some member function called capital F, and when you do hash define F first, it'll create problems with that. So be careful when you do something like this on production system. For competitive programming, it's fine, because there aren't many files that you're working with. You're working with a single file, and you know what your variable names are. So it's fine for completing, but don't do it in production system. Okay, so my question was, if I can define my points like this using the standard point, should I use a class or should I use the stdp? something that you need to look for. Sort a vector of pair using standard sort. Okay, we'll see what standard sort is later. What do you think is the size of an empty class? So yeah, that you'll have to look up those. Hint is you can use size of operator. Obviously, you can create an object and see what's. Another question is, can all classes be converted to structures, or can all structures be converted to classes? Something you need to think. Look for what are public and private in classes. And I've already told you structures, by default, everything in structures are public. And what are destructors? Need to look. What are destructors? Why do we have destructors in at all? Okay, so this is something interesting. The auto keyword. It was introduced in C++11. That is a great feature. So let's say I have a standard vector int a of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So previously what I had to do was standard pair to find, let's say I want to find the min max element. Min max element of let's use a dot begin. Okay, let's just use. Am I missing something? Okay, it does not. Yeah, just as I expected. So you see the tedious process that I had to go through. Like when I typed here, like I do expect min max element to return a pair, right? It's actually min max element. There's also a min max, but it wouldn't work for this. I think so. Okay, it works also. So min max actually returns an what does it return? Yeah, standard pair. Okay, yeah. You are right. There's actually two things. There's min max element and just min max. Let's see what does this. So std pair of. Okay, so there's a subtle difference between min max element and just min max. Okay, so you can use either of them. It's just no, I'm not entirely sure what was the difference between them. Okay, so min max returns the lowest and greatest of the given value. Okay, returns reference to the smallest and greatest values of a b till the smallest and greatest values initialize. Okay. There is nothing related to vectors or that. Yeah, so that's the difference between min max and min max. So min max element is used for a container of value, and min max is used for, let's say I directly define an initializer list, right? So let's say I define 1, 2, 3, 4. In this situation, yeah, it will work. And if I do, let's see, if I print it now it works. So Winmax actually takes an initializer list. Initializer list is actually array that you create in place. So right now I just created an array here and passed it to Winmax. So it can take an initializer list or it can take a pair of values, but it cannot take a vector. So that was the reason it wasn't working. Now for a vector, I need to use minmax element. So there I'll do standard a dot begin, comma a dot end. This should give me an error. Yeah. So the error that it says there's no suitable unit one conversion from the stuff to the stuff. But C++ is very descriptive. Will it work if you put a in there? A in there as in, let me just see. I don't think it'll work. Let's just try it, right? You mean min-max, right? On min-max element. Should complain about something. Yeah, it doesn't work with those argument types, standard vector int, comma, allocator int, whatever. Let's not go into standard allocator. But yeah, it doesn't take a vector. For these reasons, actually it's best to just Google and find out what it is. So what we did, this wasn't working, right? Yeah. So it says that there is no suitable conversion from some big stuff to standard parenting. So basically it says that whatever this min-max element is returning is not actually a pair of integers. So let's say I do not really know what to do, I'll just put auto. Auto will actually just what is it? Infer the type in prints for whatever the return value of this thing is. So what is it returning? It is just returning a standard pair. The first element is an iterator, the second element is an iterator. What is an iterator? Iterator is actually is just like a pointer to an element in the vector. So how do you get the value from a pointer? You call the dereferencing operator. So dereferencing is actually star. So if I do just star and star, it should give me the min and max values. Let's see if it works. Yeah, it does give me the values. That's 1 and 5. I'm not entirely sure why my VS Code is complaining about. But yeah, so that's how you get the min and max element. Now, what if I wanted the index of those min max elements? In okay, we'll look into that later. So that was the auto keyword. And there is something called decl type also, that stands for declaration type. You can look up what that is. Another thing that I would like to go about is namespaces. So as I said, we'll look into what this STD means. So STD is actually a namespace. A namespace is basically to separate like two different functions from each other. Now let's say I have a int max here, right? That takes integer a comma integer b, and it returns let's say std max of a. There's a cheat a little bit. Now let's say I have another max that also takes a integer, but this time it does not return. It doesn't use this kind of implementation. It returns a is greater than b, then return a is greater than b, then return a, or return b. So right now this program shouldn't compile. Let's see what it gives us. So it tells us that there's a redefinition of int max. Now let's say you have two different libraries, right? And one of the library has this max and another library has this max, and you imported both of those libraries. Now they will have a conflict, which max is the actual max. And so that's the reason everything has a namespace. So let's say this is of namespace A and this is of namespace B. So now all of these, both of these have different namespaces. Did I do everything right? Name, yeah. So now the program compiles. Now let's say I want to call the max of the first one, right? So I'll do A colon colon max. And if I wanted to call the max of B namespace, I'll do B colon colon max. So colon colon, the double colon thing is actually called scope resolution operator. So it resolutes that go to the B namespace and call the max function of that. So that's the reason the namespace things exist. And standard namespace is a very well known namespace for C. Something I want you to look that here is what are anonymous namespaces. There is something called anonymous namespace. Like I can actually omit the name given to a namespace. What is the use for that? Look up for that. And what is name mangling in C++? Something this related to namespaces. If you are curious, you can look for that. Now let's templates. I wouldn't go